Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather, now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Ah, sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right, ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Welcome to the Wrap Podcast, the place to catch up on all the regional and national rugby in Wales. You can find us on all the usual social media platforms and message us through there if you want, or you can email us on welshregionalrugbypod@gmail.com. So all the boring stuff out the way, let's talk rugby. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Wrap Podcast with me, Lee G. Joining me as always is the regulars, Harley and Jamie. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
So Carwyn is once again on holiday. I think that's about number 8 so far this year, which, Santa's Little Helper. I think that's his new name, Santa's Little Helper. But he'll be back next week, hopefully, fingers crossed, and we'll be back up to a full stretch. So joining us this week, with the South Africa game in mind, is rugby writer extraordinaire, AP Cronje. Good evening, AP.
Good evening. That's going so well. It's literally AP. How can you boss it up? It's AP. Sorry about this.
No, that's brilliant.
Sorry about this.
I was too busy caught up in the fact that I've gone from rugby writer to rugby writer extraordinaire. I was dizzy with excitement, so I'm very happy for you to trip over 2 syllables.
That just says all the way tonight's gonna go. But yeah, evening AP. How are you, my friend?
I'm very, very well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Good. Right, so let's dive straight into drink of the week, boys, because I'm going to go first on this one. No great shocks. I'm still doped up to my eyeballs on various different chemicals and drugs, so I'm on a fine glass of still water. Harley, please tell me we've got something more adventurous this week.
Well, I predicted that you'd go something a bit soft, so I've sort of gone extra. So I've gone for Kingslayer, which is double IPA, so it's an 8%. It says, so the blur that goes with it is, we must have bloody noses and cracked crowns. A juicy New England-style DIPA, but with tropical fruit flavours coming from Citra Mosaic hops. And
I like the sound of that.
First taste, it was chewy as anything. But actually, I've had a couple more sips, so I think I'll be tag teaming it with some Coke or something in between sips, because otherwise I'll be less coherent than usual.
8% is a bit of a. I remember the last time I had an 8% on the pod, and it didn't end well. Yes. It started really well. Yes. Jamie, what have you got, mate?
Well, I'm going to disappoint you because I'm not drinking this week. But I've got 2 good reasons for that, okay?
Okay.
I've got a stupid beer next week. Don't worry, I will have a stupid beer next week. But first of all, my chest isn't feeling particularly good at the moment. I have to go to the doctor, still know what's wrong, just keep coughing all the time. So I'm not really feeling alcohol. But also, my liver needs a rest. because I've been on holiday, as you know. We went to Lanzarote, drinking every day. Got back Friday morning, early hours, 2:00. We were absolutely bollocks. We then had to go from our house up to Nottingham for a glitzy wedding, which was great, by the way. But it was a free bar, wasn't it? Steaming, of course. Yeah, it was a free bar. Saturday then, we'd made plans ages ago to meet up with friends to go out for the rugby. And I tell you who I did see was friend of the pot, Gavin Thomas, who replaced me last week. I met him after the Newport County game, so we went into a nightclub of all places. It looked a bit dodgy. I haven't been in it for years, but I tell you what, brilliant place to watch a rugby. Fucking massive screen, cheap drinks, wasn't that busy. So I'm probably going to go there again, to be honest, even though it's rough as arsehole. So vibes in Newport now, that's where we go to watch the rugby. But yeah, I'm not drinking this week, but next week, I promise you, it's in the fridge. I have got daft beer for you.
Cool. All right, you're forgiven.
Oh, I'm on Coke. Sorry, I'm on Coke.
Coke. Oh, you're on Coke?
I'm on Coke Zero.
Coke Zero. Not even proper Coke. Coke Zero. I mean, God. AP, save us. Have you got something bizarre from South Africa?
Oh, I guys, I've missed the mark here so far. I'm so sorry. When I got the briefing, I was like, drink of the week. I was like, right, am I going to go research? I didn't know it was actually the drink you're having while you're recording. So I've completely missed one. I actually have nothing in front of me, so I'm completely dry. I had an entire spiel about which drink I was going to choose. If you guys want that, but I feel like it might be against the rules now if I'm not actually drinking it.
No, you're allowed that. Yeah, you crack on, because the more adventurous we get, the more exciting it sounds.
I was going to go for a classic South African staple of a cream soda float. I don't know if you guys have ever had a cream soda float, but it was just like, when you're a young kid in South Africa and like a hot summer's day, you get this sort of ridiculously like luminescent green cream soda, which sort of has a vanilla-y taste to it. And then you plop a massive, a vanilla ice cream scoop in there as well. And it's just heaven for a young kid. And probably a nightmare for any parents, as you just see like blood sugar levels rising through the roof. So that would have been my drink, although I'm not sure if I'd be able to magic one out.
See, that sounds like a perfect rugby drink for me. So a little bit of ice cream, a little bit of pop, and then sit there in front of the telly and watch some rugby and try and calm down. Which we'll get to later, about just how frustrating that first half was. But yeah, I think that's a good start to drink of the week there. Tidy. So let's just quickly run through Jamie's news desk. So do you want this week's kind of introduction tune, Jay?
Oh, go on if you must. Go on then, get over with.
Well,
take your time now, compose yourself. It's better be worth the wait.
Like before, when I did like EastEnders and you could have the drums, and then I thought, well, there's a whole range of soap operas, and I tried it with a couple. I tried it with Coronation Street. That kind of works, but it actually works really well with the old Emmerdale Farm.
Oh, Christ's sake. Come on then, get over it done with.
Jamie's news desk. This is Jamie's news desk. You have no idea how much this amuses me through a Monday, mate.
Let's talk about the news then.
Can you say I've got too much time on my hands?
Okay, so let's start with some Cardiff news, because Harley will like this. So last week, we had the news that newly capped Wales tight end Kieran Asarati signed a new deal to stay at Cardiff. And they also signed former London Irish tight end prop Kieran Parker. And today, big news from Cardiff is that Gethin Jenkins is going to be returning. So he's going to be going to Cardiff to be their new part-time defence coach. The 42-year-old who represented the region over two spells between 2004 and 2018 returns to Elms Park to be part of Matt Sherritt's coaching team ahead of the new season and will assist the club on a consultancy basis. So there you go. There's some good news for you, Harley. He seems to be coming thick and fast since the Die Young fiasco, doesn't it? What do you make of that? Gethin coming back. He must be cock-a-poop.
Yeah, I mean, I highly rated Gethin Jenkins. I've said on the pod in the past, I think he didn't actually do too bad a job at Wales. I think a lot of the issues with defence during that time was more the fact players are changing so often that it's hard to get bedded into a system because you don't know who you're playing inside and outside of. I think the consultancy basis part-time is literally just a money-saving thing. I think he's probably going to end up doing the same amount of work as a proper coach, but it's nice they've re-signed the whole Ronda front row. So Domachowski, Azarati, and Belcher. I
Yep.
thought Belcher had really come on leaps and bounds last season, through necessity with not only none of our hookers being able to throw, but most of them being injured for half the season. This new prop seems all right. He hasn't had too much game time, but he seems to be quite highly rated. He looks like he's probably going to be our, he's not going to be a direct replacement for Dyer Hip, but I mean, he's going to be he's a non-Welsh qualified prop, which means we're going to have him all season on. He's 27. He's been through quite a few different camps, including Munster, and Munster don't keep props. He can't scrummage for long. So I think, it's good news. We're getting, when we thought we would only have 2 tight heads, now all of a sudden we've got 4. I think it's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. Well, your thoughts on that then? Lee Geffin coming back to Welsh Rugby. It's good news, isn't it?
Yeah, I just think, well, we all kind of predicted it, and we said this is the obvious move. The part-time bit kind of says to me he's going to oversee somebody that's actually going to do the day-to-day work. So they've obviously got somebody in mind as a permanent defence coach, and he's there to guide and show, and you never know, they might find a golden pot of money at the end of the rainbow halfway through the season and make him, full-time permanent. Or Cardiff may only defend for the first half of every game. That might be how it actually works. That's the more
not game
likely.
Plan for 3 years.
Yeah, we're only going to do. We're only being paid to defend for half the game, so we're only going to do that. But I think it's just good to see him back in. I would like to see Stephen Jones as well coming back into Welsh Rugby somewhere. But good to have him back doing something at the very least.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's good Cardiff news then. Let's move to other news then. Last week, the WRU finally confirmed that Wales are going to play the Barbarians as part of their farewell match to Anna Jones. So it's going to be played on Saturday, November the 4th, kick-off 2:30 p.m, and that's a week after the World Cup final. Barbars are being coached by Eddie Jones and Scott Robertson. So that's all good and well. Unfortunately, it does clash with the URC, meaning our Welsh regions are going to be depleted. So on that weekend, you've got Ospreys. Now, this isn't confirmed yet. This is what the BBC are saying. So Ospreys are planning on playing their home match against the Sharks in London. That's going to be on Friday, the 3rd of November. Then on the same day as this Wales Barbars game, you've got Dragons travelling to Munster. Oh, Christ, I mean, there's a thought for you, isn't it? And then you've got Scarlets hosting Cardiff. About the Scarlets. Both of those kick-offs are at 5:15. Now, I don't know what you guys think about this, but for me, I've got absolutely no problem with Alun Jones having a farewell match. He deserves it. He's an absolute legend. He's been a fantastic servant of Welsh Rugby. It's fantastic. Give him a good send-off. And I completely understand the revenue argument. Yes, Welsh Rugby needs the revenue. It needs the money. I get it. I understand all that. That's fine. The problem I have with it, though, is the timing. I mean, it absolutely stinks, doesn't it? And yet again, the decision has been made by the WRU with no thought or care or attention to the Welsh regions, Because as a result of this game now, the regions are going to be depleted and the derby is now being devalued. So yet again, lessons are not being learned. Yes, bring in revenue, host these games, that's fine. But why are you always devaluing the regional game? And surely there must be somewhere else in the rugby calendar. I know it's congested, but it surely has to be another slot in the calendar where you don't clash with the regions. Our region should not be consistently competing with the WRU. That's not right. That's not right. So those are my thoughts on it. Yeah, it's great that Alun Jones is going to have a farewell. Well deserved. Good luck to him. Yeah, he'll bring in revenue to the game. That's fine. But the timing of it, it absolutely stinks to me. So what do you guys think of that?
Well, I was going to ask AP, would this sort of thing happen in South Africa? Would you have your national side playing at the same time as Bulls versus Sharks or something like that?
So I think from a South African perspective, they've been quite good at trying to minimize the sort of overlap between Springbok tests and sort of our regional franchise teams. Where I think there is an issue, and I think franchise coaches have tended, at least in Super Rugby, to be very much aligned with the national setup, and where I think there's now a move away from that, is what you're finding now is because South Africa's players effectively play a global season, and that internationally our calendar is aligned with New Zealand, Australia, Argentina, and the Rugby Championship, but domestically our rugby is aligned with Europe, with Champions Cup and the URC. You now have player welfare issues. So there's an enforced player break of, I think it's 8 weeks, during which time the URC is going. So what you then effectively have is you have, in the same way as you say, you're sort of devaluing these contests because your your best players aren't available. We're finding that the teams like the Sharks, who have an enormous amount of their first team players who are regular starters for the Boks, because of these player welfare mandated rest periods, they will go through a very tricky period, and I think it's typically around sort of December, January, perhaps into February, where they will be without these Springbok players. So over the last 2 seasons and transitioning to the URC, we've sort of started to see national coach or the national setup and the franchise coaches clash a little bit. I know that Jake White's been the most outspoken of the lot. So to answer your question in short, yes, we are seeing it. We've never previously really seen it in the same way, and I think it's still something that South African rugby is negotiating. I think it's going to be something that maybe the franchise coaches start to become increasingly pissed off with, for want of a better term.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that in Welsh rugby as well, the frustration from coaches and clubs. What do you make of it, Harley?
I mean, it's just, again, the timing's just completely wrong, because we've just had, most of these teams will have had players away for so long, so they're not going to, so their coaches aren't at club level aren't going to want them to come out. Like if South Africa make the final, Jake White isn't going to want to have any of his Bulls players playing in a Barbars game the week after. He's going to want them back with them to get back integrated into the squad. And none of the French sides are going to release a player during the top 14. They almost had a revolution when Fabien Galtier was trying to get some Toulouse players an extra week. It's the timing's poor. Personally, I think it should have gone at the end of the Six Nations, because I feel like there'd have been enough of a gap with your players back that you wouldn't have. Because remember, as soon as Welsh players go into the Wales camp, they've got a set stand-down period, similar. So it's not quite 8 weeks. It's a bit more varied depending on when they've been finished. When they finish, if they've had a couple of weeks, they might go back in and then back out. And if they haven't played, then you can usually wrangle it. But it just makes no sense. And again, because it's a Welsh derby, you probably won't find a good free weekend really, other than within the Six Nations, maybe. And then Gatland's not, or whoever's in charge at that time, he's not going to want to play a Barbars fixture in the middle of a Six Nations campaign, even with just to give all the squad players on out. And considering the outrage when that fixture came out, was rumoured to be announced, you'd have thought they'd have had a second thought. I mean, as well, it's the day after. They wanted that to be a double header with the Wales women. The day before, they'll be playing Australia in the WX15. The WXV, it's almost like they didn't even. They went, oh yeah, the women will fill in the double header, and then we can make it, a bigger spectacle. Without actually considering what they were doing.
I hope that no one goes to it. I hope that people in Wales just vote with their feet and just go.
That's not going to happen. Is it? Yeah. Come on, that's not going to happen.
But why are you going to go and watch a Welsh side that has just spent God knows how long together in the World Cup? At best, you're going to see all the players who didn't appear in the World Cup or are about to be released from the squad now. Yeah, you're not going to see the stars because they're going to be knackered after the World Cup. Even if we get knocked out of the pool stages and they've had 4 weeks off, Yeah.
So they will attract the casual crowd, as we all know, because we all know that there's a different crowd who attends Wales matches to those who attend the regional games. And they will get a good crowd because they'll market it to death. They really push it. It's Alan Wynne. It's the narrative of his last game. People love Alan Wynne Jones in Wales. They want to go to it. The casuals, and the day trippers, if you like, the event goers, they will go to this game. But it's just a shame that we're competing yet again.
but I hope we do compete.
Let's have this game. Let's have it. But yeah, but it's such a detriment to the regions, isn't it? It's always at the detriment to the other 4 regions. And that's what pisses me off.
My mum asked, as soon as it got announced, my mum sent me a message and saying, "Oh, do you want to fancy it?" I went, same day as the Cardiff Scarlets derby, and that's my favourite one of the regional derbies because Cardiff fan. And the games against the other two are always shit. And Jamie will agree with me. Cardiff Dragons is the worst game of rugby you'll ever see, other than maybe last weekend. It's just horrid. It's always a really horrid, niggly thing, and there's no real rugby, whether you like the tight physical stuff or what. It's just niggle.
My thoughts
going back with what the Ospreys want to do, because the Ospreys are trying to get more people interested into the region either way, and apparently they've got a reasonable fan base sort of around the London area. A few hangers on from the Golden Days, but obviously against the Sharks. I mean, part of the reason is that South Africa, there's supposed to be quite a large South African fan base in London. So, do you think that would work? Have some teams taking their home games to London for trying to encourage more South African fans, or is that a bit over exaggerated?
It's an interesting question, actually. I think that obviously, I think primarily it's probably focusing on the South African community in London. I'll be honest, and I think that if you were to pick any home games to take to London, it would naturally be the ones against South African opposition, just because obviously there's a very big South African community. I mean, I live in London as well, and actually in the URCs, some of the first URC games I went to see was actually going to Wales, because that for me was accessible. So I went and watched Bulls versus Cardiff in I think the first season, and went back to Cardiff again. So I can speak to knowing that there's a big rugby community here. I can very much see that it would be successful. I mean, I think that what's not known to us is obviously how you do the revenue splits. I don't know if it's rumored where they're going to play. I know that the Sharks and Harlequins have sometimes been in talks about using the Stoop as a stadium. So I don't know if that's been rumored yet, where they'd even stage it, and how that works out financially and who gets what cut. So I think beyond the actual rugby element, unfortunately, sometimes it does get bogged down into the more boring sort of minutiae of scheduling and finances and the like. But I mean, for me, purely selfishly speaking, obviously, I'm definitely looking forward to something like that happening, and I'll be going along. So,
yeah, I said this on Twitter last week or so when it was first rumored, that I hope people vote with their feet. And the proper fans, the ones that care about the game, go to the Cardiff and Scarlets derby and fill the stadium. And I don't care who's playing, and get the banners, get the T-shirts, and make a point to the WRU that this is not on. They are there to support the game, not compete against us. And if the Ospreys want to go to London and try and build a fan base there, and with South Africans and all that kind of stuff, fair enough, crack on. That's not affecting anyone else in Wales. That's Ospreys fans, and there'll be some Ospreys fans that want to watch every game in Swansea. They're going to be pissed off, but at least they're doing something different to try and grow the game. But when you're having to compete against the people that you still have to pay in order to be a club, in order to just put your game on and get it for it's a shambles. Anyway, let's move on. Have we got any more news, James?
Yeah, just a quick little bit. So about the proposed West Country derby, Bristol and Gloucester. So the WRU were looking to stage that as well. Now, there's no official news about this, but rugby writer John Newcombe, he tweeted the other day that I'm hearing the Principality Stadium fixture between Bristol and Gloucester in December is now a no-go. So it looks like that game, which again, that was clashing, wasn't it? With another derby. I think I was clashing with the Cardiff Scarlets derby, wasn't it, if I remember? That looks like this. Yeah, that looks like now it's off, but there's no official confirmation about that. I hope it is put off, to be honest, because that's just ridiculous as well. Again, I understand the revenue stuff and all that, but yeah, it's just ridiculous now.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about playing the game. Let's talk about last weekend, England versus Wales. So many things to discuss on this one. Harley, let's start with a couple of stats because it's always good to get some facts and figures out.
As we're going to mostly be talking about negatives, I want to talk about two positives on the stats. So first of all is during the first game, so the one at Cardiff, Wales averaged 2.8 points per 22 entry. It went up to 3.5 last on Saturday. Unfortunately, we only had 4 entries into the 22 for reasons I think we're gonna get onto later. The other thing is, despite actually no, never mind. The other thing is, I think Tane Basher managed something where he averaged half a carry per minute he was on the pitch. Unfortunately, again, he wasn't on for very long.
Made a big impact, Tane Basher, really, really impressed.
And Thomas
really
Williams led the stats for carries for meters made per carry with just over 11. Okay. Which I think is mostly that bit the try scored and basically running half the pitch.
So let's go back to Thomas Williams for a second. Has he still got his tash? I can't remember. I remember.
No, the tash is gone.
The tash is gone,
and he's playing better.
Yeah. Now
you were right.
I was right. When he had his tash, complete bag of shit. Get rid of the tash, and now we're playing great.
There we got Handsome Tom again.
Yeah, I think you need to dig up some stats about how Thomas Williams played when he had a tash and how he plays without.
Just so AP knows, we focus on the finer things in rugby. We don't look at stats, breakdowns, or that. We just want to know if they got a moustache or not. This is how we roll on the podcast.
It's stats and the percentage of the squad that's lighter than a 31-year-old, very arthritic blindside flanker.
Wow. And one thing that very relevant that we need to discuss in future: hairstyles. How many people have bleached their hair, shaved their hair off, or gone for a fucking mullet while in camp? That's a whole pod on its own, boys.
Seen Johnny Williams' barnet today?
Yeah, he's bleached his hair as well.
Yeah, but he's always injured, so we never have to see it. It's great.
Yeah, it's probably it'll probably be grown out by the time he actually gets back on the pitch. He'll have to redo his roots. So, AP, what did you make of the game on the weekend, mate?
I think you guys are sounding quite dour about it, and I think that it's possibly quite easy to feel a bit dour about it, given obviously as Welsh fans, the result didn't go your way, and that first half wasn't necessarily the most thrilling viewing. But what I would say is that it's sort of important to keep some perspective on the fact that this was a much changed Wales team, and I think this was possibly one of the most experienced English teams that have ever been put out there. It was over 1,000 caps for England, and I would say that to be within pretty much touching distance at halftime after absorbing what was an enormous amount of pressure, I thought was really, really quite good from a Welsh perspective, because I have to be honest, I think England had a lot better of the first half. I think that they were putting Wales under some serious pressure, and I think that to keep them, to keep the scoreline in check and to stay alive in the contest for what was relatively speaking, an experienced Welsh side, notwithstanding a few key individuals there, I thought was pretty good. And then actually, as you look towards the second half, obviously, madness ensued in the last sort of final 20, 25 minutes. And, with Farrell going off, you sort of feel that, and, in the other 2 yellow cards as well, you kind of feel like, there's a potential there for Wales to have come through and won it. But maybe you look at that as say that's a work on. I suppose that's why you have these warm-up games, is that you get these combinations going. But I think there's plenty there from a Welsh perspective to look at positively. I think that Liam Williams, for example, was brilliant, and I guess we can talk about individual players and how they went. But I thought Williams was really, really good, like the best I've seen him play in a while. I think Bigger over the course of both tests, actually, this one and the previous one we came on, has been really, really good. I enjoyed the sort of the to and fro he and Gats have had in the media yesterday as well, which or over the weekend, which I think we can discuss as well. But I thought he was seriously good. And then I think some of the guys that you mentioned there, Basham I thought had a good impact. I thought Plumtree was really good, and hopefully I don't know how extensive his injury is, but hopefully he's not seriously injured, because I thought he's had 2 good games as well. So I think enough positives there, certainly from Welsh perspective, to take forward.
So let's talk Welsh reality, which for everyone else is pessimism. So what did we make of the lineup? I mean, there were certain areas of that game that just let us down massively from start to finish. And I was really surprised at the standard of the lineup. James, what did you make of the lineup and the set piece?
It was an absolute shambles, wasn't it? The lineup was an absolute shambles. It just didn't function all afternoon. And something that caught my eye, I did watch the game back, and there was an incident that really caught my eye. I just couldn't believe it. I think it was like the 71st minute. So Mario Toji goes off in his feet. Wales with a penalty, right? So Bigger kicks it to touch. Hooker's getting ready to throw it in, right? And the players are just looking at each other. And Adam Bede is like, you can see him waving his arms.
Yeah. I wanted to bring this one up, actually.
Sam Pye throws the ball in. Nobody jumps.
Nobody jumps.
Everyone's looking at each other like, what's going on? Now, that's unacceptable. That is unacceptable. I'm sorry, that's bollocks. And I got to talk about Adam Bede. Go on, what was you going to say?
I was going to say, because I thought you were talking about a different one, the one where we got free kicked, which I'm not sure if it was for time wasting or coming out the line, where Chunza had spent the last couple of lineouts, which had started to work. He was lifting Beard, and actually having that bigger guy lifting a big guy was actually giving us that extra bit of height that was getting past Laws and Itoje, who we've got to remember are two of the best defensive line players. Yeah. I know we've got South Africa on the board who might disagree in putting, but I mean, people like Etzebeth and RG Snyman are also, very good, but England do have two absolute monsters at defensive line network.
Yeah,
and
it was a shambles, wasn't it?
So I think Dan from kind of Rugby Life pointing out, really, there are only two proper line-out jumpers. I know Rhys Davies did some jumping, but really, Beard and Plumtree were the main two options. And as soon as you've only got two options and you've got two people who are marking them, your lines can shit. But it looked like they've just decided they were going to experiment with a new call system. Even in that first period, around about sort of the 20-minute mark, where we had penalties, which 9 times out of 10, Wales would have gone for the points and gone, right, it's a test match, we're going to go for points. But they went for the corner, they went to practice more setups. And then the maul messed up. I mean, I had issues with one of the mauls. I got called as a turnover, where I think Jamie George actually barrels in and takes out players' legs. But if the ref doesn't see it, then you can't really do much. But it just looked like they were confused all game. And
that's what I mean.
It was the only thing because when you got to think about the starting pack, the whole tight five and the set and the blind side are from the same club team. They've played week in, week out together. And it's, in the same, you've got a 10 who's played a lot of the season there as well. It was surprising how disjointed it all was. The only thing I can think of is if they were trying a different set of calls. Because it looked like they were thinking about everything, whereas normally you'd see it and the call's planned, the backup is A, and then it goes up and down, even if it goes to shit. You can usually see it usually seems a lot more coherent than that. It looked like early days of Pivac, bad line out, and even they were I know South Africans are all big on their line out work, so I don't know if you've got an opinion about that, AP.
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever you look at a line-out, it's sort of two things, right? It's one, it's the organisation, and two, it's the throwing. And I think on both cases, I think Wales probably came up short, to be honest with you. I think in the first half, there were a few overthrows. It's difficult to say much positive about it, like truthfully. Yes, you can say that England do have very good defensive line operators, but Wales just weren't up to scratch. But similarly, I don't think it's fatal. I really don't. I don't think that it's something with set piece is one of those things that particularly line out when it's mostly organisation. I think that it's something which is not necessarily easily rectifiable, but it's something which is very, very eminently trainable, right? It's less sort of enigmatic than, for example, a midfield combination that's not working or a 10 that's out of form. You can drill lineouts, and that Gats will be having them drill lineouts all of this week coming up against South Africa, who obviously really, really put emphasis on the set piece as well. So yes, I mean, you can't shy away from the fact that it wasn't good, but that's also why you have these warm-up games, right? Is to see, okay, great, this is definitely an area we need to focus. And remember, like, you've only got so much time in a week, right? So if you go, right, what were the areas where we weren't good enough against England last week? You know, what can we focus on this week? More accurate the breakdown, which I actually thought Wales were pretty good this week. So, you know, you need to make exceptions somewhere. And I think maybe they just didn't focus enough on their set piece in the last week, and it probably showed. But yeah, we'll see. I guess the proof will be this coming weekend then.
See, in Cardiff, though, it was a lot better, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The line out. I think it was 100%. And that's what made it even more disappointing, the fact that we had such a good line out in Cardiff, and yet in Twickenham, it completely fell apart. Now, I got to talk about Adam Beard, right? And I think it's a really important point here. Now, Adam Beard is becoming one of those Welsh players that the public love to hate now. You know, he gets so much shit and criticism online. And I like Adam Beard a lot, right? I've defended him to death on social media. You know, when you guys call up with the Lions, there were so many people putting him down, saying he's rubbish. I stuck up for Adam Beard because I do think he's a very good player. But I gotta say, on Saturday, he absolutely stunk. And it gives me no pleasure to say that. You know, I'm sorry, he's in charge of our line-out. He is the line-out captain. I thought his captaincy as a whole was absolute rubbish. Dan Bigger and Liam Williams was actually telling him at one point to kick. You know, he didn't know what to do. And, you know, I don't think he'll be dropped for the World Cup. Like, people say, oh, his place is in jeopardy, he won't be on the plane. I think Adam Beard will go to the World Cup, right? But he's got up his game, because I thought he hasn't been good for a while, Adam Beard, and I thought he absolutely stunk on Saturday. And when he got that yellow card then, right at the end, you know, that just summed up the performance. So I was really disappointed. And like I say, it gives me no pleasure to say that, because I'm a big fan of Beard, and I know he gets a lot of criticism and everyone's on his back. But yeah, I was really disappointed with Adam Beard. Well, there were a number of players, actually.
So I think the thing that summed up that yellow card for Adam Beard for me was Dan Lydiate offside again for his third, because I think
he did have a good game.
We might move on there. I think Dan Lydiate, he may have made all his tackles, but he had a pretty shit game for Dan Lydiate. Yeah. I don't know if it's because I'm holding him to his high esteem, but I thought he was very well off the pace. And considering we're in a pool with Australia, Portugal, and Fiji, you can't afford to be slow around the park. You've got to, even if you want to keep a tight structured game, you've got to be on it, because and you know, even Georgia to an extent now, their game, they're going to move around. Adam Beard for me, I think he might have dropped his starting spot. You know, Gatland wanted to take him even with a burst appendix last time, but the reason he used was he's 6'8" and 18 stone, whatever. We've got two of them in the squad now. We've got Will Rowlands, and Will Rowlands has come back from a very long break and looked like not missing a beat. I do think Adam Beard is tired. I think he's you know, after that Lions tour, he was supposed to have 5-6 weeks off, and Ospreys pulled him back on like the third week of the URC, and he's just not really had time off since. And I think that's something he needs. But he looked absolutely baffled the whole time. And all right, I know there are other issues, like the hookers. Derry Lake isn't the most sympathetic line-out thrower. You know, there's not a lot of margin for error with his throw. He's going to throw where he needs it. He's not going to think. But there were so many mistimed jumps. Like, players didn't know who was supposed to go up at certain points. You know, again, that free quick kick where, you know, Shunza's there getting ready to lift Beard, and then he's, oh no, hang on, no, I'm jumping. And it, again, I think they got absolutely spooked.
Nobody knew what they were doing.
No.
It was embarrassing.
So the thing for me, Sam Parry came on, and actually it did start to improve a little, which is no criticism of Derry Lake, but sometimes that is just the way it works. But also, when things start going wrong, we didn't have option B. You know, we didn't have, you know, in the good old days where you'd have a 2-man line out, a 4-man line out, or you know, you'd have something up your sleeve where if this doesn't go right or things start going wrong, we'll try something new. And there was nothing new. It was all full line outs, front man jump, we lost the ball. Full line out, front man, they knocked it back. The answer was nothing there. So for me, it was the lack of understanding that you know, we needed to have a backup plan. We played against one of the best line-out sides in Europe. Now we're about to play against one of the best line-out sides in the world. You have to have something. You have to have a quick tap. If they're kicking long, you have to have a quick. Right, you have to be prepared, and we would on Saturday. So let's move on from set piece and let's try and look for some positives.
I was about to point out how the scrum actually got worse.
Go on then, point out how the scrum got worse.
So, all right. Admittedly, you had Kemsley Matthias, new prop, who, all right, for the Scarlets is decent enough for his scrummages. Probably not his. I wouldn't say that was his key point. He will keep that scrum up. He might win a couple of penalties, but I'd say he's more of a round the field. Lou said. I mean, you might agree, you might disagree, Lee. But then you paired him with Dylan Lewis, who is even when he may not necessarily do anything technically wrong, he just doesn't pass the eye test as a tight head prop. I don't know what it is, because even Cardiff fans say the same thing.
No, I know what it is. He can't scrimmage. That's what it is. Let's be honest.
The thing is, sometimes he can, because he held up against the box for.
Why can't he do it every time then?
That's the problem. I think, and as well, I think when he was up against Genge is a little bit more whiny about those things. I mean, it didn't help we had Kemsley Matthias having his debut against Dan Cole, who is there for scrummaging and nothing else, because that is what Dan Cole does.
But he took 2 penalties out of him. There were 2 collapse scrums where he penalised Dan Coles, and Kemsley Matthias is going, look at my beard, baldy boy, look at my beard.
It was only one. The other one was the one where Genge got yellow carded. Dylan Lewis was the one who got the plaudits. That.
Okay.
But yeah, so the scrum was 83% in Cardiff, and then it was 67% in Twickenham. So despite the fact we had this better front row, it didn't. I mean, we can put that down to plenty of things. I mean, get a more picky ref. I mean, to be honest, I think both teams were just trying to get penalties out of the other one constantly. No one was interested in actually restarting the game.
Okay.
But yeah, the scrum got worse. I said, I don't know if we want to talk about. Do you think anyone? I think Liam Williams and Thomas Williams. They've cemented their places. I think they're definitely in the squad. I think some of those Ospreys Thomas Francis. Thomas Francis and Dylan Lewis. I think are at this rate might end up being a second or third choice. So I think Francis is losing his number 1 spot, particularly if Henry Thomas plays next week and has a decent game. Because I feel like Francis isn't doing anything other than scrummaging, and his scrummaging isn't enough to win you penalties.
It's because he's got a mullet. It's because he's
always had shit hair.
Yeah, no, I won't be beaten on this. It's hair or moustache, and in this case, it's hair. Carry on.
But yeah, I thought as I've alluded to, I think Dan Lydia, again, he made his tackles, but he wasn't with the same impact that he used to have. He wasn't knocking people back for Reffel to get over the ball or anyone to get over the ball. And I think he was just too slow to get round and do stuff. So I said I'm very disappointed with that pack. That pack should have probably been one of the most cohesive units we put out, and it just didn't work. I thought the pack last the week before I know it was a changed England side and maybe second choice, but he looked better as a unit as well, despite coming from here, there, and everywhere.
Okay, let's move on to some positives. Let's go back to AP because he's good at this. Let's find some positives for Wales from that game on Saturday. Was there anyone that stood out for you, AP, that you think, do you know what there were a couple of guys there that had the kind of game you'd expect from, but was there anyone there that kind of stood out that you weren't quite expecting?
I guess it's tricky because I haven't really seen much of Plumtree in New Zealand, to be honest with you. So, and I think he's a bit of an unknown entity. So it's maybe unfair to say I wasn't expecting much from him, but I think that actually the bits that I saw over the 2 tests, I think he really stood out to me. I mean, obviously he's quite a tall guy, which means he's a great line out option, and maybe not so great as it turned out, but he's a good option potentially going forwards, and I think he'll get better drilled there. I think he's got a big engine. You can just see he plays with so much intensity. Everything he does is sort of exactly what you want. He just looks like a player who's really, really hungry to make a mark. I think he even gave away a penalty on I think it's one of the new sort of technicalities of the law, where if the ball comes out of the ruck and it's still within 1.5 meters of the ruck, you can't dive on it. But just seeing him effectively diving on balls, just desperate to get stuck in. I mean, we've not even talked about his 50-22, which I think was pretty impressive, but but he just seems like a very dynamic, very intense player. So I think he's a guy, at least in the forwards, I was pretty impressed with. And then in the backs, I think I mentioned before, was just Liam Williams. I just think that he's just such a classy operator, and I think that I find with respect, I find Welsh fans quite funny in this way, in the fact that I think that you guys sort of serially underrate Dan Biggar and Liam Williams. I think that just from the outside looking in, and perhaps present company excluded, but oftentimes I see people gloss over just how good these guys are, and it's great when every so often they stand up and put in a performance that sort of gets everyone back on side and says, yeah, actually this guy is the shit. And I think that Liam Williams had one of those performances over the weekend. I thought he was just everywhere, and I thought he was just brilliant, to be honest, all facets.
Yeah,
I think in Wales we're just used to Liam Williams being injured and Dan Biggar mouthing off.
Yeah, possibly. But I'll tell you, sorry, just one moment that sticks out in my mind. Actually, it was that turnover that Williams won in the first half, and I think England were like red hot on the attack, and he was just straight in over the ball, better, as good as any flanker that you could hope for, and he was just completely unmovable. And I think commentary made the point as well. You sort of think how many fullbacks in the world would be getting stuck in that position and would be winning a turnover there. And to be honest with you, can you see? I can't see Willy LaRue doing it. I can't see Ramos doing it. I can't see Stewart having the technique to do it. I can't see Keenan doing it. So I mean, yeah, he just brings a bit of grit and a bit of gumption, which I think is just, yeah, I really rate him basically.
Yeah.
Harley, who stood out for you, mate? Who was the?
You're going to be very impressed because it's the man that Gatlin pointed out had a big ass, and I was very impressed with Joe Roberts. I thought he played with more than his one cap would suggest. I think if anything, it kind of showed you what you actually want a 13 to be doing in the midfield defensively. He didn't really get too much in attack. I think part of that is because of who he was paired with. Not because I think Tompkins is a bad player, but I think he was taking too much because of the way Tompkins plays. He's probably better with a big direct bloke outside him. And I think Joe Roberts is better with a big direct bloke inside of him. And I think when Kieran Williams came on and was straightening up, I thought Joe Roberts started to shine with the ball. But I thought his defensive reads were great. I don't think he got caught out too much. I think there were a lot more. Again, I think it was a lot more weirdly quite close to the ruck. I think Wales seemed very fragile. I think the fold wasn't quite right, and they weren't sure who was supposed to be bodyguard. But yeah, I thought Joe Roberts was fantastic. I think that's about it was as good a debut as you'd expect without him being like man of the match spectacular. And I really rated him. And I thought Tompkins played well as well. I just think the pair of them together, I feel like if they're both going to be quite mazy, skillful, trying to get around people, you need someone who's going to run straight.
Yeah, you need a
because the Jesse going on to alluding to what we might talk on later with Jesse Creel just running that hard line is, when you've got someone who's running a hard line every day, you're going to have to stop and think about tackling them. Because if you don't, even if you manage to try and get a tackle on Kieran Williams, he gets up and goes again.
Yeah, he's like one of those, those machines where you like whack-a-mole things, where you whack them on the head and they go down, and you think that's great, and then pop up, and then he's off again. So he's very much that kind of like, no, give him another whack. No, he's up and gone. So the balance does work well. Joe Roberts is one of my players as well. But Jane, what did you make it? What did you? Oh, go on, Hal. Go on.
I was going to say, the few bits, because he didn't get much ball, I thought Tom Rogers showed some nice glimpses on the right wing. He didn't get much, but I had no, it was a case of like, if he started next Saturday, I wouldn't be too worried.
I don't think either of our wingers particularly had great service, but we'll come back to wingers and milking tackles, etc. We'll come back to that in a moment. James, who stood out for you?
I think it's so. You've been mentioned. I thought Liam Williams, that was the Liam Williams of old, wasn't it? That's the Liam we all know and love. And I thought he had his best game, just in general, for club and country in a very long time. Yeah, I agree with Avi. I thought Joe Roberts was excellent, actually. Really impressed me. That line break, to set up Tom Willis's try was really, really impressive. He just went through Marchand and Lawrence like they weren't there. I want to talk about Dan Biggar. Actually, an AP raised this, and I do think it is an interesting talking point. So I think Dan Biggar has been really good in these warm-up games, coming off the bench, making an impact. I know you mentioned he missed that one kick to touch. That was his big mistake. But put that to one side. I actually think over the course of these games so far, Biggar's been really good. He had a bit of a scuffle with Owen Farrell. And he wrote in his Mail column, didn't he? I didn't like the way he was speaking to me. So, I told him. Now, Warren Gatland has a Daily Telegraph column, right? And he's publicly called out Dan Biggar today. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he's basically saying Dan Biggar's reaction in confronting Owen after the tackle disappointed me. Dan is one of our most experienced players. And in that moment, you wanted him to be calm and relaxed. And then he goes on to say he would have sent mixed messages to our younger players. In big moments like that, you want your most experienced players to show leadership and calmness and deliver messages about what we're going to do from here and that we're going to take control. Now, here's a question for you, AP. Is it right that a current head coach publicly calls out his players in a newspaper column? Because to me, that's not sitting right. What do you make of it?
To be honest with you, I find the idea of sportsmen and coaches who are currently playing, writing and commenting on the games that they're playing odd anyway. I find that entire setup a bit odd. I can understand why newspapers love it, because you're much more likely to read an article written by Warren Gatland or Dan Biggar than any rugby journalist. So I get it from their perspective. I find that a bit weird personally.
Yeah.
And then it's impossible to really know what anybody actually thinks, because I kind of feel like both Dan and Gats probably know that anything that they need to say, they'll probably say to each other in camp, and you don't really know where either of them stands and whether what either of them are saying in their columns is exactly truly what they believe. So, setting all that aside, I agree with you in principle. I don't think it's good to have your coach singling out and calling out players. I think it isn't a good look for the wider squad harmony. You say it sets a Gat's saying it sets a bad example for the younger players. It doesn't set a great example if your head coach is having to go at, a former captain and one of your, most experienced players. So there's that element to it, but it could very well just be, Gatland trying, maybe this is a bit conspiratorial, but maybe it's a bit like Gatland's trying to control the narrative of we expect to be a very composed side, whereas maybe behind closed doors he's saying, fair enough. And there's the other question is, if you're a young guy coming into the side and you've just seen, Owen Farrell, who I'm sure we'll talk about, has got a bit of a history of these types of hits. Personally, and I can only speak for myself, if I was on a rugby pitch and I saw, my former captain, but a very senior member of the team come in, run in and stick up for a player that's, at the start still of his career, international career at least. I'd sort of take a bit of pride in that. And I think, it's quite good that these guys have got my back. So
I agree.
Look, it's everyone's got their own probably take on this, and everyone's got their own opinion on this. I think that the idea, where I stand in general, as I said at the start, is just the idea of guys writing columns mid-test matches before World Cups. I just find it a bit odd. So I'd sort of say people should maybe not read too much into them in any event. But yeah, on the whole, I'd agree with your point as well. It's not a brilliant look to have that sort of discord there.
No. I think you've touched on how I feel about it, because the way I was thinking when I saw it come out was I wonder how much people are going to talk about this over how uncohesive the lineout was, how Wales showed some mental fragility they haven't shown like 3-4 years. By the end of the Gatland era, Wales wouldn't have lost that game. Wales would have won that. And I have no doubt that at all. Line out going to shit, no matter, doesn't matter. Wales had the mental fortitude. That was the idea. Was Wales, Gatland spent most of his 12 years getting Wales to a point where they never accepted defeat. If they were within 5 points, even if they were within 10 points, they would find a way to win. And that was the big thing with the 2019 team. That's part of the reason why they were able to hold South Africa so close, even though they lost their number one tight head prop within the first 10 minutes, was because they went, no, we can still do this. And I think we lost a bit of that under Pivac. I think we did lose a bit of that steel. And I think there's so many things that we couldn't, like we're, a podcast with. I mean, unfortunately, the Welsh public will find the negatives in the game and pick on that. But I think a lot of the people outside that, they're gonna see, oh, hang on, the head coach and the players, players not going. I personally, I think Gatland knows exactly what he's saying with all these things, and I reckon he's told Bigger, this is what I'm going to say. Don't worry about it. Again, it might be conspiracy, it might be a weird conspiracy theory, but I think it's Gatland with his grenades trying to put all the pressure on to people he knows can take it. Like Dan Bigger thrives on this. Remember before the last World Cup when JJ Williams was saying that Dan Bigger wasn't creative enough, so Dan Bigger, had an absolute masterclass at 10. And anyway, that one's for JJ, and and everyone's there laughing. Bigger thrives on it. So I think those two know what was going to be said, and they've just sort of gone, yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so we'll talk about some of the key iffy bits from that game in a second. I just wanted to say Joe Roberts showed George North how to defend at 13. Okay, so
I think he showed a lot of 13s how to defend at 13.
I've banged on about this all season. We spoke about it Sunday night, James, about George North.
You're obsessed. You're absolutely obsessed with knocking George North. Leave the guy alone.
I've said he's got lovely hair. He's got a lovely set of thighs. He's got a lovely smile and a wonderful personality. Fuck off to the wing and do it out there. He's not a 13. So, I could sit there and talk about the technicalities of where Joe Roberts was as compared to George North. But when you look at the two, I think Joe Roberts missed one tackle, which realistically there should have been inside cover coming. Other than that, I counted 3 England attacks that they were looking to move to the wing, they were looking to move to the fullback, and he stopped that pass. And as he stops that pass, that allows Reffel to come from the inside and dick either Farrell or whoever. So masterclass from Joe Roberts as far as I can think. Right, let's move on to it is still related to the game and it isn't related to the game. So on Sunday we put a tweet out. It was a retweet of Andy Good's comments about Josh Adams in the air. Yeah. So far to date, there's been 118,000 views on our Twitter page on that one comment. Yeah. The idea that Josh Adams gets taken in the air, 5 meters from the line where that player could have gone up and competed. Josh Adams gets taken in the air. He's jumped 2 foot. His head is now 8 foot off the ground, or just below 8 foot off the ground. Yeah. He's got no way of stopping himself hitting the floor other than his shoulder. And then, that shoulder to head is maybe 3 or 4 inches. And you can see his head clearly hits the floor and he holds his head. And Andy Good says that that's play acting. What a twat. What did you guys think? Was that play acting, AP? Is that play acting?
Yeah, I think maybe useful for me is obviously someone who doesn't have skin in the game. Necessarily obviously not being a Wales fan. I mean, obviously not. I mean, and I think he's been pretty widely, sort of criticised for that tweet. And I think it's bad that it's followed hot off the heels of another pretty. I mean, I again, as a South African fan, was very, very disappointed. And disappointed's not the right word. I was pretty fucked off of how he dealt with the Grant Williams case, where he, in that case where, it was Malia had sort of a very reckless charge down and knocked out Grant Williams, and Good was basically giving it the whole, it's fine. He's attempted a charge down, sort of carry on. But this, I think, is even one level further, because, I mean, you sort of recited the facts in as cold and objective a way as possible, really, there. I mean, I think you're actually being kind. I think that, I think he got up a bit further than 2 foot. So I think that he's come down from what is a, I think he's come down from an appreciable height. He's landed pretty tough right on his shoulder, and then as you say, his head then obviously makes contact with the ground anyway. So there's a possibility of a sort of a whiplash effect there. And the concussion guidelines are pretty clear in stating that you don't need direct head contact for there to be a concussive effect. It can be because of sort of whiplash or a blow to the body can result in that. And he's gone there, and he's gone immediately into the fetal position, holding his head. And you sort of think anybody who's, who's just suffered a blow like that, and I mean, players are contact fit and contact ready, and they're used to taking certain types of hits, but no one who gets taken out in the air comes down and does anything but what Adams did there. It's just, I mean, you can go look at it. No player lands in that way and doesn't immediately go hands to head. So where this notion that he's play acting comes from is complete nonsense. And I think he's almost reverse engineered it, because I think the fact that he hasn't gone off for an HIA, I think that is something that is worth discussing. And I think it was a mistake that he's not looked at, because ultimately, even if he stands up and then says, no, actually, I'm fine, I'm okay to carry on. Like, of course he'll say that, because all sportsmen want to stay on the pitch, because that's what they do. They're ultimate competitors. It's a game that's in a balance. Obviously, they're going to want to stay on. The whole point is that, as the doctors, you have to overrule them. You have to say, no, you are not making decisions in your best interest, and we need to assess you because you have potentially suffered a brain injury here. So that is potentially a separate discussion. But bringing it back to Good's tweet, yeah, I think it's just a pretty despicable thing to say, really, to sort of throw out. And I saw that Cueto got involved as well and was sort of backing him up. And you just sort of think, in what world does anybody have any other reaction than to have the reaction that Adams has had there after coming down from that height?
So, Harley, let's talk about the other HIA that was requested, which was Owen Farrell's attempted decapitation of Tane Basham. And I've got to say, he's a pretty good attempt at a decapitation. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's one player I'm afraid I did neglect to mention my players I was well impressed with, because for me, Basham proved me very wrong. One, he proved that if Wales need a number 8, they've got to pick any back rower from the Dragons, because they are the best players at getting the ball out when your scrum's going backwards. Faletau's brilliant at it. Wainwright's good at it. Basham was fantastic. There was one where the scrum sort of disintegrated around him and he came out with the ball. I had no idea how he did that. But when Basham came on, it was noticeable how much more oomph Wales's carrying game had. Now, people were actually making meters just because of the fact of Basham would have a good carry, which meant the next person could carry. I mean, I think Chunza as well, with some of his neat little offloading contacts. I know he's not the most liked 6 option at the moment, but I do think he does offer something slightly different. But that tackle is so, like, Farrell has done it so many times and got away with it. I mean, people have been bringing up the video Razzie put out after that South Africa game of him teaching Andre Estes and how to tackle like Farrell after him being taken out. And the thing that depresses me, and I put the tweet out as soon as it went to yellow, because the ref had just done it as a, with the bunker, right? Even though I know it was a straight red, everyone here knows that's a straight red. I'm going to go to a bunker because then I'm not the bad guy, which is my issue with the bunker anyway, especially with the way it was used in Super Rugby. And it was just shocking, like how he's been able to get away with that is for so many years. And he's he ruined one poor young lad's season. Was it Charlie Atkinson for Wasps during 2020? Never saw him. You didn't see him for the rest of the season because of the concussion. Basham could be out for now. Could be out for now. Although saying that, I mean, going on to HIAs, apparently having a TV on in the background is enough to make you fail in a HIA.
Yeah. Did you see the quote? Did you see what Gatlin said? So Gatlin said, failed his HIA after taking off, but we're going to ask further questions about that because the player said he felt fine. I mean, that's bollocks for a start. It doesn't matter how the player feels. Yeah. You can't get fucking properly checked out, mate, And that the assessment was hard to take because there was a television on in the same room, which is a bit laughable, really, isn't it?
But the HIA process is you do a whole load of tests at the start of the season. You read things forward, you get given a series of numbers, you have to read them back, you get given a load of words and you have to remember a certain percentage of them and things like this. And then you do it, then you have a rest, and then you've got to remember some of those words and you've got to remember some of the numbers. And it's a complicated process. It's not like the old days, what day is it? Who are you playing? What colour shirt are you wearing?
What was the score? What was the score before you got hit?
who tried to decapitate you. It was, so it is different. So I'm not sure how far we're going to get with that, because yes, having a television on will distract, but you're an international rugby player. You know what a HIA is. You know that this is important whether you get back on the pitch, and if you're not going to focus 100% on that test, if you like, then it's not right. It's not right. So I don't think he's going to get very far, but I think Farrell's just taking him out of the Rugby World Cup, if I'm honest, on that one. So, Jane, what were you going to say, Jane?
Yeah, I'm just going to go back to the tweet that you put out on our account, right? It's quite funny. So you got 22 reposts, one quote, 455 likes. Over 118,000 people saw it. So you got really good engagement. There's two things that made me laugh. So first of all,
I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say.
Right, wait for it. So the English winger is lucky he wasn't red. It wasn't actually a winger. It was Freddie Stewart's
the fullback. Yeah,
that's fine. But this is a really poor tweet. He quotes tweets now. Andy Good, right? This is a really poor tweet from a respected player journal. When has Andy Good ever been a respected player journal? You're feeling that or what?
The first 20 comments were nothing to do with that. It was all to do with Andy Good respectable. Seriously, come on. That word respectable.
To be fair, he does want a job with TNT Sports, so he has to be nice to the other people involved.
It was a bit ridiculous. But so Jane, just wrap that game up for us, mate, before we move on to South Africa. What do we take out of that game, and what do we see in that game?
They had a really good start here from Russ Petty, and I will give credit to Russ Petty. And AP actually mentioned it as well. And now I can't find it, which is really annoying me. Now I had it here and I can't find it. Where is it? It was about the number of caps, but I just can't find it at the moment.
Oh, it's about England having like 10,000, not 10,000, 1,054 or something like that, I think, yeah. Whilst Jamie's looking really for that, can I just do one last thing about 2 points. One, the Freddie Stewart, to the letter of the law, is correct, was a yellow card because Adams lands on his arm, not on his head, which I do think almost punishes the player that's been hit in the air for self-preservation. And then the thing with Farrell is he's that's two key players in Wales's game he's taken out, because if you actually look just before Dewi Lake goes off, he tries to croc roll him, can't actually croc roll him, which is bad enough, but also then just decides to put his full body weight onto his knee, which I think Josh Gardner of Blood and Mud pointed out is a full-on cunt trick, which I think we've all lost players. Ellis Jenkins, one of them. I think it's happened to. I can't remember. There was a South African who suffered it. Jack Willis has had it. The croc roll. And having
it was against Wales actually. It was Jean de Villiers who did both his ACL and MCL and PCL in one go on a croc roll.
Yeah, it's awful. Like they tried to clarify and they said they're clamping down and they just haven't been. And frankly, as someone who does like getting his head where it shouldn't be in ruck time, that is something that does make me worried. Is that if refs aren't actually going to look at this, do I really want to get my head in? The fact is, like, if you're too slow to get to the ruck, similar to that Xander Fagerson red card, if you're too slow, you just accept you've lost a ruck. That's all I would say for anyone out there who's playing and players. Have you got your stat now, Jamie?
Yeah, I found it. Sorry about that, I lost it. So this came from Russ Petty. I think it really puts into perspective about these two teams and the games that have been played. Okay, so the England squad in Cardiff was 530 caps, okay? The England squad at Twickenham last week was over 1,000 caps. It's 1,067 caps, right? Now, when you consider all the changes that Wales made, because let's be honest, yes, there were some experienced players in there, but that was an experimental B team. We had no right to be as close as we was. In fact, when you looked at the lineups, I thought we were going to get battered. I thought it was going to be 25, 30 points battering. So I'm actually taking a lot out of that game, but it does frustrate me that we should have won because our set piece let us down, and the game management, and Gatman alluded to this, the game management in our last quarter was really, really poor. And I think if we had a set piece and we controlled the game at the end, that last quarter. Wales win that, and they should have won it. We were 19-7 up. We were in a position to win that game. So on the whole, I think we outscored England as well on aggregate over points and tries. I don't have those figures, but I am actually encouraged by Wales, doing those games. If I was an England fan, by the way, I'm worried. I'm absolutely worried because they went strong. They thought they were going to roll us over. And I am not impressed by Borthwick's England. They look stodgy. Their attack is toothless. I actually think Wales right now are in a better place than Borthwick's England. I am going to say that. And there's a lot of England fans out there, and I know this, having spoken to them, they are very underwhelmed and uninspired by Borthwick under England. So they got big problems, England.
Yeah, but England fans don't listen to our podcast because they're too chicken shit to have a little bit of reality thrown in their face. Anyway, let's move on to South Africa. Let's move on. So before we've discussed the game on Saturday, Springboks have announced the World Cup squad. What have you made of it, AP? Is it who are you expecting to be in there? And for me, looking at the structure of it, 2 hookers and 4 scrum halves just seems odd. What did you make of the squad?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was full on meltdown when it was announced. I mean, I sort of got it. I got it leaked to me about an hour or two before it went out, and I saw it and I was like, this is just going to be discourse for days, really. And it's obviously, it's subsequently emerged that 3 incredibly notable absences, and Andre Pollard, who's still not, recovered from a knee injury. Luete Jaga's out. He's got a heart condition, and so speedy recovery to him. Obviously, that's incredibly serious if you have sort of an inflammation, I believe it is, in his heart, which is really, really worrying. And then Lukhanyo Am, who unfortunately has just been getting back to form after being injured, and then was injured again in the Argentina game. And as we've seen in these warm-up matches, we've seen multiple injuries. I mean, today we had the confirmation Intermac is out for the entire World Cup. Van Poortvliet for England's out for the World Cup. So, it's been desperately unfortunate. But yeah, so I mean, I saw the squad, and I think there's a hell of a lot to discuss here. And I think the sort of the bot coaching setup has very much been in damage control mode of trying to justify some of the selections. The 4 scrum halves is bizarre, admittedly, and they've sort of tried to justify by saying that Faf is, third choice 10, given that we've selected Mani Libbok as the only fly half in the squad, no matter what anybody says. I mean, they've played Damien Willemse at fly half in a number of games, and he's sort of blown hot and cold. He's not a natural fly half. He's more suited to fullback, where I think he really shines, and inside centre, where he's pretty good and brings something different as well. So you have Libbok, who's the only out and out fly half. You have Damien Willemse, who's sort of like break glass in case of emergency fly half, and then you have Faf de Klerk, which is all the world is falling apart fly half. So that's their sort of rationale behind picking the 4 scrum halves. I mean, it seems to me, even still, it seems excessive. But that's their thinking. I mean, even the fact that they've picked Jaden Hendrickson in the squad without him having played a minute of international rugby this year, I think is pretty ballsy. But yeah, I mean, elsewhere in the squad, I think it's sort of gone a bit more as expected. I expected there'd be a choice between Andre Esterhazen and Kanan Moody, because I figured it would just work out that way in the backs, of them being short numbers. But obviously with Am's injury, they've sort of been able to pick both. So quite happy to see them both there. But yeah, elsewhere it's sort of as expected, to be honest. It's just really that sort of half-back pairing, which is a bit dodgy. I mean, interestingly, they've only gone for 2 hookers, but Dion Fourie will function as that third hooker. He sort of started his club career there, then transitioned to the side of the scrum, and obviously they see him fulfilling that sort of utility role there as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that they named 2 players as utility forwards. I say Fourie and is it Mostert?
And Mostert.
Yeah, so it kind of, we're kind of expecting this in the Wales squad between second row and back row, but to have utility forwards covering hooker, that for me just screams, I don't know, not panic, but I'd want 3 hookers, 3 solid, strong hookers. It's not like South Africa are short. of decent quality hookers. Do you know what I mean? And I'd want 3 out and out hookers in such a pivotal part of the game. Yeah, I'd want 3 there every game myself.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I agree with you, and I think everybody who was sort of picking the sides that they thought, or the squads that they thought they'd see, had Joseph Dweba as that third hooker. And I mean, it seems a bit odd because he's sort of been brought in since 2021 into the Springbok fold. Since the Lions series, he's sort of been very much filling that third hooker role, and has, you know, sort of had a number of caps in that position now. He's sort of come through. So for them to basically jettison him in favour of Dion Fourie, who will have to play minutes at hooker in the World Cup, there's no way that you're going to go through every pool game and your knockouts just with Mbonambi and Marks at hooker. It means that Fourie will be playing there. And, you know, I can't remember the last game of professional rugby that I saw him playing at hooker. He's not played there for the Stormers at all. He was supposed to play for South Africa there in a test in the autumn, I believe, and then an injury meant that he went on a flanker anyway. So, I mean, looking ahead, and I'm sure we'll discuss this, but against Wales, I'm almost certain if he doesn't start there, he'll 100% come on as replacement hooker against Wales, because he just simply needs minutes there. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, yeah, this. Oh, sorry, I just wanted to hop in because this is one of the bits that I find quite. You know, I wouldn't say I'm anywhere near as clued up as people like AP, but I follow the Rugby Bits podcast, which I know AP's been on a couple of times. I mean, 2 things that in the pack that I just find. One is, you know, will rugby increase the number of caps from, you know, number of players from 31 to 33, in line with the fact that most people have to choose between 2 of one out back and, you know, 2 fly offs, 3 scrum offs, etc., whatever, and then, you know, only 5 props. And the idea with the extra 2 is to have the extra prop and the extra, you know, and the extra halfback. And South Africa went with, oh no, what we're actually going to do is we're going to have 1 less hooker, we're going to have an extra scrum half, and then 1 less fly off. It just seemed like a really bizarre way to do it. I know, and there's all the rumours about, you know, Razi's going to start kneecapping scrum halves when Pollard's fit. But I mean, it's, ostensibly Franco Mostert, yes, he is a decent second row as well, but he's spent most of his time at at 7, which, for Welsh listeners is, what we'd call a 6. He's been primarily used as a blindside. So you've got 8 back rowers there, and I know South Africa have got plenty of back rows and it's hard to pick between them, but I'd have thought, I said I would have put Dweba in. I know he's probably not the strongest line-out thrower, but I mean, surely he's better than someone who, I think the stat was the last time Dion Fourie played at hooker was 2 years ago. And I'm surprised he didn't bring Thomas Tutoy along as well, because I thought actually he, as the thing, I thought he's been playing better than Trevor. But I don't know if AP agrees on that one, but
yeah, I think that's I think that was an interesting one as well. I think that it was always going to be between Trevor or Thomas, to be honest. And I think that I always had them taking five props, because both Nyakani and Thomas Tutoy play that sort of swing prop role. And I mean, we saw Nyakani in 2 consecutive tests play, loose head and then start at tight head. So I think it's sort of rare in world rugby that you still get guys who can really do that. And I think, as we saw in the Lions series as well, Nyakani is one of those guys who genuinely can play both sides equally well. So I think that was probably the rationale behind only the 5 props. I think desperately unlucky for Thomas Tutoy. I think probably the most unlucky player on account of the fact that he's basically shot the lights out in the URC for the Sharks. I think he was probably one of their standouts and has been really good for South Africa as well, barring that red card against England. So I think he can feel quite unfortunate to have missed out. But yeah, I mean, the entire squad really, it just feels a bit odd. And I mean, now the fact that we have 1 outside centre in the entire squad is also very, very nervy. I mean, centre's always been an area where we've basically relied effectively quite heavily on 2 guys, but at least in the knowledge that we had good cover at 13. Now, obviously, with Am out, we haven't really blooded a 13 beyond the 2 that we had for 4 years, So this is a bit nervy as well, and I think it's the reason we're likely. I mean, I think they'll start Kane and Moody at 13 on the weekend. I think they should actually, because they basically need to get answers very quickly over who is going to play that role. Because similar to the point I made with Dion Fourie, it's the fact there's no way Jesse Creel is playing every minute of every game in the World Cup. It's just not happening. So at some point against Tonga, you're going to need to play, a second choice 13, and that's probably going to be Moody. It's either going to be Moody or Willemse, but Willemse's got a pretty heavy workload already. So I think that we're likely to see Moody start at 13 against Wales if I had to guess.
Yeah, speaking of Willemse, because he's your second choice, was he second choice 10, second/first choice fullback, depending on which style, whether they want to keep William from the start. And I suppose Damien de Allende, he has played 13 to make way for Esterhuizen and Willemse in the past. But then you've got the same issue as having Creel playing every minute. You're going to have Damien de Allende playing every minute. Or you're going to have, an Andre Jesse centre partnership. And then Damien gets the rest that week. Yeah, it's weird for all the depth and versatility the Boks have been trying to build, but they've seemed to. I very much doubt they have predicted Am not being there, because I think Am is still one of the best players in the world and the master at the 13 channel at the moment. Admit I've only seen really highlights of the Rugby Championship. I thought it was a little bit off the pace, which you'd expect after an injury. But yeah, it's right. I think it's going to be. I think just jumping ahead to what we're going to talk about, I think it is going to be an experimental SA side, which might actually work in Wales's favour for some things Gats needs to try out.
So before we talk about Saturday's game, one last question on this squad for you, AP. Yeah. Now I'm going to take Faf de Klerk out of this because for obvious reasons. So who's got the best hair and who's got the best facial hair within the squad? I mean, we can remove Faf as having the golden flowing locks. I think that's, he's number one. Aside from Faf, who's do we look out for the best haircut and who's got the best facial hair?
Oh, I think that is the key question, isn't it? You've touched upon it there. I think that the best haircut has to go to Damon Dillon. He's an immaculately groomed man. Ooh. He's got the proper, skin fade going. He's got the line. He just looks very, very well taken care of. And he's a classic tall, dark and handsome. So I'd go. He's probably got the best Barnet. And then in terms of best facial hair, now that's tricky. I guess you'd have to go for someone like Alkir Sneeman. He's got a proper beard going. He sort of has the whole Viking effect. So best facial hair, probably Alkir Sneeman, and best groomed Damien Delander.
See, now we've got the important questions out of the way. We can talk about Saturday.
For that, Jamie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'll just say quickly. I agree with AP. The squad does look odd and slightly unbalanced, but I still think it's actually a pretty strong squad. But when you look at their players, they're on standby, right? It's absolutely ridiculous. So Kanuam, Utelega, Jean-Luc Dupree, Thomas Dutoit, Joseph Dweber, Virgil Yankees, Handré Pollard, Evan Roos, Gerhard Steenkamp. I mean, that's just insane, isn't it? But I do think, and I don't know if AP agrees with this, I think they need to try and get Pollard back as soon as he's able to, because I am not convinced that fly half. I don't think Damien Willemse is a fly half, and Mane Lowick blows hot and cold for me. I think Pollard makes him tick. So if I was an South African fan, I'd be very keen to see if Pollard can come back and try and get in the squad. But I think they will go deep. We'll talk about this later. But I think South Africa can go deep in the World Cup, and it is still a strong squad, even if it is a bit unbalanced and slightly odd.
So yeah, I think you're sorry.
No, go on, Nate. Go on.
No. I mean, I completely agree. I think everyone was waiting for the return of the king for Pollard, and I think that everyone sort of thought, this guy is sort of the key. But it kind of exposes the fact that South Africa has been far too reliant on effectively one fly half for far too long. And to put it in context, actually, I mean, the last time Handré Pollard played for the Springboks was the same time that Elton Jantjies last played for the Springboks. It's a long old while ago now. So he's actually been absent now for an extended period of time, and you would have really hoped that Damien Willemse would have taken over that position and sort of run with it, or Manie Lowick would have sort of taken over that position and run with it, and neither of those things really happen in the way we've wanted them to. I think what I would say is Libbok is he's a far better manager of the game than Willems is, and I think he gives the backline a lot more direction, a lot more momentum. I think he's as I say, he's a natural fly half, and I think 2 seasons experience in the Stormers, winning the URC and then being losing finalists. He knows the drill. He's not the youngest guy anymore. He's sort of been around the block a little bit. He's solid in that respect. I think the overwhelming or the lingering question for Springbok fans is just his kicking, and I sort of hate to bring it up, but it's just not. You can't really have a first choice international fly half going into a World Cup where you need to win effectively 6 games on the bounce to win it when you're kicking at 73% as he has been over the last sort of year and a half. That's just not accurate enough, and there's no real way to cut that, unfortunately. That is ultimately what wins and loses you games, and at least it has done traditionally for South Africa as well. When you want to play the style of play that South Africa do, which is highly attritional. I mean, I've always said this: South Africa is never going to blow you away by 40 points, usually, typically, unless it's very much a tier 2 versus tier 1 situation. South Africa doesn't tend to win games pretty or win them by an enormous margin, but more often than not, they tend to win them. And part of the reason for that is because they are just ruthlessly accurate off the tee as well. So again, everyone's looking at Libbok. From a South African fan's perspective, you're now sort of like, well, it's in your hands. There's nothing else that you can do other than sort of get behind him and say, look, go for it. You're obviously a confidence player. Everyone recognizes what you can bring, what you do bring on attack, how you can game manage. Those elements of your game are brilliant. And hopefully kicking is something that can, sort of come with. I mean, again, South Africa doesn't have a specialist kicking coach, which to me, again, seems like an oversight. It seems like a really weird decision. But it's now sort of a bit wait and hope. I mean, if Pollard is fit before the World Cup, I don't see why they wouldn't get him in, because obviously the cutoff point is the 27th. They've said that they're not going to do that, which I think, again, is bizarre. So, look, there have been some odd and interesting calls by the coaching group as a collective, but as a South African fan, I'm sort of just sat back going, well, I hope they know what they're doing.
Fair enough.
Okay, so
two questions to you, AP, with the whole of, if Pollard turned out to be fit and he was going to come, who would you drop? Would it be one of the scrum halves, one of the loose forwards? And then the second bit of my question is, do you think there was a bit of a mistake from Jacques and Rassie not to put more time into someone like Kerwin Bosch or Chris Smith of the Bulls, who's seems to be a little bit more like the traditional, what you'd consider a traditional South African fly half?
So on your first question in terms of who they'd drop, I expect it would be one of the scrum who falls out. I mean, it was really interesting working out because South Africa had 5 pretty good scrum halves, so it was always interesting, everyone trying to fit 5 into 3, and obviously they've gone with the extra one. Faf would definitely stay as the first choice. I think Grant Williams would stay as the impact guy who can speed up the game. So it'd be one of Jaden or Quibus who falls out. They sort of back Jaden to be 100 cap Springbok and see him as being the future at 9. But having said that, he's still very inexperienced. So I actually think that it might have been Jaden who falls out. But again, this is all just playing the theoreticals, really. It's as they've said that even if Pollard is ready, they won't bring him in if they don't. If there isn't an injury, which you can sort of understand as well, because what kind of message does it send to name this entire squad, to go through this pretty elaborate over the top capping ceremony just to basically then give someone a ring, say, by the way, mate, you're hooked, cheers, thanks for that. So that's in answer to the first one. And then, sorry, just remind me, what was your second question? Oh, sorry, whether they should have invested more time in Chris Smith or in Kerwin Bosch. I think Kerwin Bosch is probably not the guy they would have invested time in. I think that he's defensively just not up to it, and I really hate to say that because his kicking game is fantastic. He can bring a lot of fluidity on attack. He's a decent game manager, but it's been one glaring element of his game that's been just not been up to scratch, and unfortunately he's not made progress there. So I don't really think that Kerwin was ever really in the conversation. And then Chris Smith, again, I think he probably had a much better first season of the URC than he did this season. I think he sort of fell out of form a bit and wasn't really knocking on the door. I think that the true reality is, and I think it's a tricky one to admit as a Springbok fan, is just the fact that we didn't really have or don't really have a very good crop of fly halves. I think I think that you sort of see some younger guys coming through now, but actually it's been pretty slim pickings for a while now, actually.
And we know what that feels like in Wales. We've felt that for a few years. So how many of these players are we expecting to see on Saturday then? So let's move on to Saturday's game. Are we going to see what you would expect to be the starting 15, that first starting 15? Is that the side that we're going to see take the park on Saturday?
I mean, that was the plan. I actually don't think that's going to be the plan anymore after the 3 injuries we've seen. But yeah, initially the idea was to go full noise for Wales and for New Zealand 2 weeks in a row. I think that because, we now only have one specialist 13 in the squad, because we've gone for 2 hookers, we're going to need to see Kane and Moody involved in some capacity. We're going to need to see Dion Fury involved in some capacity at hooker. And I actually think that, again, it remains to be seen whether they stick to the plan of going pretty full strength, or whether they revert to basically picking some of the guys who aren't in the actual Springbok squad just to try and preserve some of the World Cup players for later in the tournament. So I'm actually inclined to think we're going to see guys like Jean-Luc Depree, potentially like Thomas du Toit, those types of guys involved in the Wales game. I don't think they would have flown him over to the UK if they weren't going to be either involved in this game or against New Zealand the week after. It's a really, really tricky one. I mean, I've had lots of South African pundits sort of discuss with me as well, being like, what are we thinking for the weekend? And frankly, I don't know. If I had to guess, I think we'll see Kane and Moody start at 13, and we'll see Dion Fury come on at hooker. I think it would be useful to see Adhir Snyman at 5, given I think he's actually now going to the World Cup more as that sort of loose headlock position, rather than when he started for South Africa, he was more a replacement for Etzebeth. Now I think he's more of a replacement for Luit de Jager, and obviously with Luit's injury, he's now second behind Marvin Orri. So I think I expect to see him starting at 5 or involved at 5 in some capacity as well. But beyond that, it's much of a muchness. I don't know. I think it'll be a pretty strong squad regardless, but we'll see.
And what are you expecting from Wales on Saturday? What are you expecting to come at you?
I think probably closer to the side that we saw in Cardiff again. I think they'll go. I mean, the messaging seems to be that they're going to go pretty full out at this one as well. I think that this is a really good opportunity for them to correct some of the set piece woes that they had against England. And that will probably be the messaging from Gatland this week, will be there's no better team to test yourself against than this team that obviously prides themselves on set piece. I also think that of all the international coaches, Warren Gatland is pretty intimately knowledgeable of what makes South Africa tick and where they're strong and where they're not. So I think for him and for Wales, this might be a bit of a grudge match, a real opportunity to stamp your authority. Because ultimately, if you look at it from Welsh perspective, very good victory over England in Cardiff. Probably should have taken a victory, but pretty changed side against a much more experienced England side at Twickenham, and lots of positives to take there. If you can win against the world champions in Cardiff, that gives you so much confidence leading into the World Cup. So I think they'll go pretty full whack.
So Jamie, what side are you expecting Wales to put out on Saturday?
Honestly, I haven't got a clue. I honestly don't know.
I'm glad I asked that question.
I don't know what team Gatland is going to put out. I don't know if he's going to go strong, like strong as in preparing for Fiji strong, or is he going to mix and match? We know that Alex King today has confirmed that Alex Cuthbert and Johnny Williams is going to be available for this game. But look, the one thing I will say, I don't know what team Gatland's going to put out, right? I guess injuries will play a part as well. I'm not bothered about the result of this game, to be honest with you. Performance is important. These warm-up games are phony wars, we know that. My biggest concern is picking up more injuries. And I'm not going to lie to you, and I'm not saying this to be funny. Of all the teams that we could have played this weekend, I really did want Wales to be playing South Africa, because we know how physical they are. We know how dominating they are. They're going to come and you're in for a tough physical battle. And I'm just praying no more players come out of this injured. That's the biggest thing for me from this weekend. I want a good performance, but please, boys, no injuries. But in terms of what Gatland's going to choose, honestly, I got no idea. I don't know.
Hmm. And Harley, what do you reckon? Is there a change of emphasis for the Springboks? Is there a different team? Is there a different set of tactics? What are you expecting?
South Africa have been trying to change the way they're playing anyway. Part of the reason why they've tried to lean on behind Willemse and Lebok is because they want to be a bit more expansive than the clash and bash that won them the last World Cup. I imagine they still want to be able to do that job because it's very effective. But they want to be able to have different styles because if Plan A doesn't work, you need a decent Plan B. I'll be very interested to see who they get to play at 10 because Lebok needs more minutes at 10. But also, you need to try and work out who this second and third choice are because if Willemse is going to be on the bench as your 23 guy for your big games, do you really want him playing 10 against Tonga and Romania, who are quite physical teams? I don't think the Boks have any issues with whether or not they're going to beat them. I think they will. It's how bruised they'll be after it. And again, they want to do Dion free. Wales are having issues where I think we need to start putting our second choice hooker on at the start and have it so we can have most of the game with our first choice. And it was something I was talking with friend of the pod, Hugh Griffin, and as a absolutely out there thing. And I do not want to see it happen, but it's something I do think one would secure a particular player's spot because Kieran Azarati this season has been playing for the Rags and cover on the bench for Cardiff at hooker. And does Gatland use this as a chance to look at that? On a case of that, Dewi Lake's injured, Brian Elias is out for 3 to 4 weeks, which is cutting it fine. If we lose another hooker, we basically have to call someone out completely fresh from the thing, or we're going to need someone who can step in an emergency. And and as we saw in the
with Parry on the bench, that's what I think they'll go for. They've got Sam Parry on the bench and they'll start with Belletti. That would be my guess.
I'd like to see Parry have a start personally, but I think that's how they're going to go for hooker. But I do wonder if at some point they're going to think about that as having just that extra bit of versatility, which seems to be the buzzword when we get to World Cup years.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I said, Box. I'd love to see Jean Klein have another run out. I'm a big fan of him. Munster may not be my chosen Irish team, but you can't help but get caught up when Munster are on a roll because it is a cult up there. I said for me the big one is, do they take the risk by trying another 10 or do they try and give Lebok minutes because he's going to be the starting guy? And then on the bench, do you put Faf? Instead of starting Faf, do you have him on the bench in the 22 role as and have a 5-3 split because we know the Boks love their 6-2. And
personally, I think
I don't know.
5-3.
I genuinely don't know which way the coach is going for this one.
I think that they'll go 5-3, and I think the reason they'll do that is the main. Sorry, I dropped off there for a second. Sorry, I think the main reason that they'll go 5-3 is because Khaleesi's probably back now, and I think they'll definitely want to get some minutes for him, and they'll probably either go for Kwagga Smith on the bench or Marco van Staden to cover that. So that, and then probably Franco Mostert to cover blindside and lock. So I suspect they'll go 5-3. Not least because they'll want to try Jaden Hendrickson and Grant Williams both, which I think will be important because neither of them have had enough minutes. Grant was obviously supposed to start against Argentina and then got injured 30 seconds in, and Jaden's had 0 international minutes this year. So I think that's probably what we'll see in the halfback pairing.
And from a Wales point of view, I want to see us really go at the halfbacks. I want to see Refalon. And I just want to see that halfback pairing, whatever that halfback pairing is, attacked. I want to see pressure on there constantly throughout the game. I want to see. Remember when Jake Ball had Faf de Klerk up by and he was laughing and all that kind of stuff. Get in their faces and just kind of put them in the dirt and stop them, because it separates that bit where actually it takes the kick out of the game. it stops the ball going out, and you've just got to deal with the forwards, which isn't an easy thing, but you know what you're dealing with. I think attacking from a defensive point of view, attacking scrum halves and outside halves has got to be part of what we do. I'd love to see Joe Roberts on the pitch with Johnny Williams inside him, just like we were saying earlier, giving us a direct and an outside route. And I'd love to see Josh Adams score, because I think it's starting to become a thing. It really
Would
is.
he play? Do you think he'd play? I don't know if we'd be risking this game. I got a feeling it'll go real Dyer and Alex Cuthbert. If I had to guess the back three now, I could guess it. It's Monday. We don't know what the squad is going to be. I would guess he'd go Halfpenny, Dyer, and then Cuthbert. That would be my guess.
But the other bit I was going to say was that I think we need to break that game up more. And that's from a tactics point of view, we are outstanding when we break the game up, when we take the quick tap, when we take the quick line out, when we do the funny line out with 3.5 people in there. And, we need to start thinking of that, because we are going to, if we can't break the Springboks down this Saturday, then we've almost got to go back to the board and go, right, how do we play against the likes of South Africa, Ireland, France, New Zealand? How do we compete with these players, given the squad that we've got, and how do we outsmart them? We're not going to outmuscle them. We may well outrun them, but we've seen the kind of the way South Africa will slow that game down. I'm feeling a bit tired. So and so goes down. Someone's got a boot. Someone's got to replace their hair. Faf's on the pitch, he needs 5 minutes to do his makeup and all of this shit, anything to slow that game down so the Welsh fitness doesn't come into it. And I think we need to find ways around that, and that's what I'm looking for from Wales this Saturday. So we're going to wrap this one up now, gents, and we're going to go with some game predictions for this weekend, and in honour of our guest AP, where we think South Africa will finish in the World Cup. So let's go with this weekend first. We'll start with you, AP. What's your score prediction for this weekend? And then where do you think South Africa are going to finish the World Cup?
I think 22-17 is going to be the score. South Africa are going to win. I'd be, absolutely crucified if I didn't say that. So back South Africa, 22-17. I think as with all games, it's going to be quite close between Wales and South Africa. It always is. Even that test series where Wales came down to South Africa, no one gave them a hope. I mean, the first two games finished within, inches of each other. So 22-17, my prediction, South Africa to win. And where South Africa going to finish in the World Cup? Well, naturally, I'd say they're going to win it. But if I'm going to also have a dose of realism, I struggle. I genuinely think that we're probably going to make a semi-final exit. I think we might get there in the quarters, but I think that facing France and potentially then New Zealand after them, I think might just be a bridge too far for us, to be honest.
Cool. Okay, Harley, your predictions for the weekend and where are South Africa going to end up?
I'm going to go for a classic of 1916, because that was the semi-final score, and then the next time we played South Africa, it was the same score again. so I'll stick with that one. 1916. I don't think we'll see much try scoring attributes. I do think there's going to be a bit of a, because even on Chasing the Sun, you have Razzie saying about how for the semi-final they wanted to go fast and loose, and then they went, actually no, Wales want to fuck us up, right? We're going to fuck them up more, and that was it. And it's a great documentary, Chasing the Sun. I loved it. So I think South Africa maybe just. This is the problem with this game. I find it such a close fixture that it's sometimes it's a coin toss either way. It's one player foot slipping in a scrum, and that's the game. It is really that close. I always find with the two teams. I don't doubt at all South Africa getting out of the group. As much as there's been said about that's a pool of death, that's not a pool of death. A pool of death is 4 teams all within is having the 8th to 10th, 8th to 12th teams in one pool. They won't get much further, but that's a very tight pool. I said playing France or New Zealand. I don't know, because France isn't a team South Africa can outmuscle, and New Zealand's, I don't know what it is, since Joe Schmidt's come back on board, they've actually got know which way they're. I'm not actually sure Ian Foster does any coaching anymore, because when it was just him in charge, it was after shambles. But now it's saying, I think if they got to a semi-final, they'd be playing one of Wales, England, Argentina, or Australia. I think they beat any of them quite comfortably. So, I'd say they're either getting knocked out in the quarters or they're making the final.
That's a fucking big fence to sit on, Harley. Fair dues.
It's a huge fence to sit on, but I think they'll win a semi-final. It's whether or not they can get to the semi-final, I think, for me.
Okay. Jamie,
I'll say the same with the others.
Jamie, predictions for the weekend, and how wide is the fence that you're going to sit on?
Well, look, I'll try and keep it brief because I know time is against us. So, in terms of Wales, South Africa, look, it's very difficult to predict the result when you haven't even seen the lineup. So, it's very difficult. I do agree with AP. They've always been close games, Wales, South Africa. We know it's going to be attritional. I think it'd be tight. I will go for South Africa by 6. In terms of the World Cup for South Africa, we did that pod, didn't we, with Kaelan, and I did say I fancy South Africa to go very deep. I know it's slightly unbalanced. We've covered that already, but I still think they've got a very strong squad, and I think they will get to the semi-finals at least. It wouldn't surprise me if they won it, but yeah, I'll go for semi-finals.
Okay. So I'll wrap it up then with a dose of reality. Wales are going to absolutely destroy them on the weekend.
Right.
No. Again, it's going to be a close game, and I'm going to go Wales 20, South Africa 18. I think there's enough in it for this weekend for Wales to go. Let's knuckle down and do some business, boys. And then World Cup. Surprisingly, I actually agree with Harley, but I think they will get knocked out quarterfinals. I just think the structure of the squad. I think there's just been too many kind of this might work and that might work, and too much lacking of form, and where you normally expect a lot of quality from South Africa, there's a little bit of uncertainty. So yeah, I think quarterfinals, but again, same as you, Jem, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go on and do further. I just don't think it's going to happen for them this time. So there we go, gents. We are all done for this evening. A bit of a marathon session this evening, but enjoyable as always. So, AP, how can people find you on social media, my friend?
I am a bit of a Twitter obsessive, so yeah, at rugby_AP on Twitter is where you can find me. I'm not on anything else, so that's where you can find me.
Cool, and we'll retweet the shit out of you this week just to wind you up for the weekend, to make it a good one. So, with that in mind, gents, all the very best. Thank you for this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure. We shall catch up and do it all again next week, where we will celebrate a magnificent win against the mighty Springboks. And in between now and then, enjoy your rugby, gents. All the best.
Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the Wrap Podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed recording it. Please do rate us and tell your friends, as it really helps us to grow and get better. We'll be back next week with more of the same, and until then, enjoy your rugby.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.